What's up guys, welcome to my Holy Paladin healing guide for Legion pre-patch, patch 7.0.3. In this guide I will go over your talents, your spells and abilities, your stat priority, and then your AoE single target heal rotation, and then a demonstration of that in an actual raid. Now as far as the rotations go, they kind of come together. I will explain them separately and then kind of how they interact, because you don't normally just do one when you are raid healing. And then at the end, we'll go over macros and add-ons and what you can use, things to consider using to help you out. Let's go ahead and dive right into the talents. In your first tier of talents, generally you're going to default to Bestow Faith. Just low mana with a cooldown, and it just causes healing after 5 seconds to whoever you use it on. It does a lot of healing, so it's quite good, and it's really, really low cost, so it's really, really useful. And generally, this is what you're going to want to use to kind of boost your single target healing output, which is what you're kind of best at as a Holy Pally right now. You can, however, take Light's Hammer if you need to. If you need a cooldown for every minute or so, like an AoE, just like before, throws a hammer at the ground, does healing, AoE healing, so it's quite good if you do need it for that. But Crusader's Might, not really worth taking at all right now. Makes it so that if you use Crusader Strike, it reduces the cooldown of some of your abilities. But Holy Shot comes up pretty often already, and Light of Dawn, not the strongest thing in your AoE is like kind of meh. Plus, there's a reason that you kind of want to be standing out of melee range if possible. It has to do with your mastery and the last talent we'll get to in a little bit. So default to Bestow Faith, but if you do want like an AoE mini cooldown, then you can use Light's Hammer. And your next tier, you've got 3 different types of utility. So you kind of pick what fits the situation or your playstyle. You can use Cavalier, and what it does is it gives you your little speed boost. Gives you 2 charges, so you can use it twice as often, essentially. But Divine Seed is just your speed boost. It kind of mounts you up for 3 seconds, makes you move at 100% movement speed. And so this is a nice movement if you need more movement and mobility, then this is your talent. Unbreakable Spirit reduces the cooldown on your Divine Shield, which is like your immunity bubble, your Divine Protection, which is your personal cooldown, and your Lay on Hands, which is the full heal by 30%. So you can use this if you need to use those cooldowns more often than just the regular cooldown would allow. Typically just your Divine Shield and Divine Protection, because Lay on Hands, even with a 30% reduction, is 7 minutes, and a lot of fights aren't going to be quite that long, especially right now. But if you do need it, like more utility and more defensive, then you can use this. And then Rule of Law is a 30-second cooldown spell. It increases the range of your heals and the reach of your mastery, which we'll get into more. But basically, it gives your heals more range. So if you do need that for some reason, you can use this. So all 3 of these are viable, and you can kind of use whatever fits your situation. The next tier is all CC, so don't worry about it too much. You can kind of pick whatever you want. Fist of Justice just lowers the cooldown of your hammer every time you Judgment. Repentance, it's a casted CC, kind of like a polymorph or something. It does CC, and then if it takes damage, the ad takes damage, then it breaks. And then Blinding Light's an AoE disorient, but if they take any damage other than Holy, then it will break. So they're also kind of up to you, whatever you want to use, and whatever situation calls for, but this will not affect your healing at all. Now your next tier is really important. There's 3 different auras, and they interact with your cooldown aura mastery, which is now related to whichever talent you pick, rather than its own spell. We'll get into that. Generally, you're going to want Aura of Mercy right now. It does passive healing to 3 people within 10 yards of you every second, so it's a nice kind of constant AoE heal. When you pop Aura Mastery, it affects everybody in that 10-yard radius, and it doubles the healing that the Aura of Mercy does. So it's a really nice healing cooldown. It's really, really quite good, and the passive is really nice. Or Sacrifice, when you're above 75% health, it reduces the damage that people take around you by 10%, because it redirects it to you. So if you drop below that health, it'll stop doing that. So it's not active that long, so it's not that great. And then while you pop Aura Mastery, instead, 10% of the healing you do is kind of split among or it's replicated to the people in that circle. So it kind of spreads your healing to everyone in that. It's not bad, but the passive kind of loses out a lot. Now Devotion Aura, again, this 10-yard radius around you, they take 20% reduced damage split over the number of allies in the area. In other words, if there's 2 people there, they take 10% less each. If there's 4 people there, they take 5% less each, and so on. So it gets really small, especially if you're kind of clumped up. When you pop Aura Mastery, it then becomes kind of like the old Devo Devotion Aura, where they all take the full 20% less damage, but it's only within that 10% radius. Now, right now, or Mercy, just because of the healing, the passive healing it does, and because of mana problems and other reasons, it kind of outperforms both of these two right now. But Devotion can be nice if you really need that cooldown, I suppose. But I really recommend Aura of Mercy right now. Now, the level 75 talents, Divine Purpose, just not worth taking right now. Just not really worth at all. And then Holy Prism is kind of going to be a default. It gives you an AoE heal if you use it on an enemy target, so make sure you do use it if you do take this talent on the enemy so that it spreads healing to many people, 5 people, rather than using it to heal one person and deal damage to 5 things. But if you want a cooldown, like another cooldown, because you know you need an extra cooldown besides your Avenging Wrath for a period of big damage, then you can take Holy Avenger. It's not terrible. It just increases your haste now by 30% and your Holy Shock healing by 30% for 20 seconds. So it's a pretty good cooldown. It's definitely viable if you need that extra cooldown. But generally, I will go Holy Prism, kind of help your AoE, which is pretty weak as a Holy Pally. Now in your next tier, we have some really important talents. Generally, I will default to Judgment of Light and actually switch to that to show you guys later. But Judgment of Light, and it makes it so that when you judge the enemy, the next 40 attacks against the target heal whoever's attacking it for a certain, like a little bit. And it has like a 1 second cooldown, if you will, per person. But it's just a really nice thing. It kind of helps everyone. It kind of gives everyone like a mini version of Leech that's hitting the boss or the target that you judge. And so it's really nice and it's really, really good and should be your default. Now, there is prop paladins do have the option to take this as well. So if you have a prop pally or another holy pally even in your raid, only one of you needs to be using this. So if someone is using Judgment of Light in your raid already, then you can use Sanctified Wrath instead, which just buffs your Avenging Wrath, makes it last longer, and reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock. So still the same as before, and it's not a bad talent. So Judgment of Light if nobody else is using it, and then you have to make sure you judge the target every so often, either when the stacks fall off or if the duration runs out. And then if someone is bringing that buff already, that debuff, then you can use Sanctified Wrath instead. Fervent Martyr, just not worth right now, because you don't use Light of the Martyr, which we'll get into pretty much ever. Right now especially, so not really worth using. Judgment of Light unless someone has it, and then Sanctified Wrath if you do have someone in the raid who's using it. Now in your last tier, tier 100, I would recommend for raid always Beacon of the Lightbringer. It's really, really good. It makes it so your mastery now increases your healing based on the target's proximity to either you or your Beacon of Light. So your mastery, and I'll get more in depth with this later, but your mastery makes it so that the closer you are to your target, the more you heal. This Beacon of the Lightbringer allows it so that it's not just you, it's either you or whoever you beacon, and it'll measure the distance from that to your target, and it takes whoever's closer. This kind of means you can have 2 areas where like you've got a lot of healing going on, and it kind of allows you to stand in the range group and then beacon the tank so that both the melee and the range are benefiting from the biggest heals you can possibly do, which is why I mentioned earlier Crusader's Might is not so good, because you don't want to necessarily be in melee, since you'll probably be beaconing the tanks, typically. And it also increases the healing and range of your Light of Dawn by 30%, which is really useful, because if you're standing at range and you want to heal the melee, you don't want to go too far away from the ranged. So it's pretty nice. It's really, really good. Now you can use Beacon of Virtue in, say, 5-man dungeons, changes your beacon, and it just kind of helps heal. It's got a 15-second cooldown. You kind of gets rid of your beacon, though, so it's kind of a loss in a raid, which is why you don't really use it there. And it heals your target and 300 allies within 30 yards for 8 seconds or so, and it heals them for about 40%. And it's not bad for 5-man content, but in a raid, definitely Beacon of the Lightbringer. And Beacon of Faith right now, not worth taking at all. You get a second beacon, but it does 20% less, and it's just because your mastery is really good now. It gets really, really good with Lightbringer, so really recommend this for raids, just pretty much all the time. So those are your talents. Let's go ahead and talk about your spells and abilities. First, you've got Holy Light. It's your pretty cheap spell, slightly slow, like a 2-second cast right now with my haste anyway, and it just heals, so it's nice. It's Holy Light, pretty simple. You got Holy Shock, which is kind of your bread and butter as Holy Pally. It's a also cheap spell. It's instant. It's got a pretty short cooldown, and it does healing. And it can proc a passive effect called Infusion of Light, which either makes your next Holy Light much quicker to cast, or buffs the healing of your Flash of Light by 50%. So this is really good. Really, really good. Holy Shock is kind of what you use all the time whenever it's up as much as possible. Now, because you don't have Holy Power anymore, it doesn't generate any Holy Power, but it still gives you that proc, which makes it really, really important. Then you have Light of Dawn, and it's slightly more expensive, but still fairly cheap. And it's just costs mana, and it just does a conal kind of heal in front of you, and it hits up to 5 targets. So if you have more than 5 people taking AoE damage, go ahead and use Light of Dawn. That's kind of its role. It's one of your mainstay AoEs. Actually, your only default AoE spell right now. Then we've got our talents, of course. Right now we've got Bestow Faith and Holy Prism. Then we've got a spell called Light of the Martyr. Now, it's a really cheap spell. It's instant, and you take some damage, and you heal an ally for a large amount of heals. The problem with it is, one, you don't necessarily want to be taking that extra damage because you could die. But two, it doesn't actually replicate its healing to beacon targets, and so that's kind of it does a lot less healing eventually, because if you heal someone with Beacon of Light, say like Holy Light, healing for 33k, but then it also heals the beacon target for 40% of that. So it does a lot more than Light of the Martyr, for example. So you don't really use this unless you need to heal someone, like you have to, but you're moving to move out of a mechanic or something, and Holy Shock's already on cooldown. You can use it, but I really recommend not using it, if at all possible. Then we do have Beacon of Light, of course, which I just mentioned a little, and you just put it on typically the tank or someone you know is going to take a lot of damage, and it replicates any healing you do to anyone on the raid, minus with Light of the Martyr, but any other spell, to that target up to 40% of the heals that you healed your original target, and also if you happen to need to heal them, so pump like heals into them, like with Holy Light and Flashlight, it will actually refund 30% of that mana. So it can make it more efficient to spam heal the target, so that's why it's really good on tanks. And it keeps like passive healing on them as you heal the raid or other, off tanks or things like that. Then of course we do have our Hammer of Justice, just a stun, 1 minute cooldown. We have Avenging Wrath, one of our big healing cooldowns, the personal buff. It increases the healing you do by 35% and your crit by 20%, which is really, really good. Considering, and we'll get into this in the stat priority, but crit's really important. Then we do have Judgment, which if you're using Judgment of Light is really important to make sure you keep a buff up, but it's just a ranged attack. It's got a cooldown on it, and it makes the target take more damage, but more importantly, if you're using Judgment of Light, it gives you that debuff on the target. Crusader Strike you don't really use right now. It just does damage, melee range. Don't use it. Lay on Hands, like your Desperation, full heal, 10-minute cooldown on anyone you want. Does apply Forbearance, which means you can't be affected, or that target can't be affected by other things that cause Forbearance, like your Divine Shield, if you use it on yourself, for example. It's just an immunity, full immunity, protects you from everything. Then you've got your Blessing of Freedom, which removes CC, snares, roots, and such, so let people move freely. Blessing of Sacrifice, it's a 2.5 minute cooldown now, so it's a lot longer than it used to be. And you just put it on someone, and it reduces 30% of the damage they take, but sends it to you instead, so make sure you don't die. But it does stop the damage you would take if it's going to put you below 20%, so you won't die from it before it falls off, but just be careful with it. Especially if you put it on a tank, it can hurt quite a bit. And then we do have Blessing of Protection, which removes all physical damage and physical debuffs, and it drops all threat on them, but they can attack now, so don't worry about using it on, say, like a melee or a hunter or something. They will still be able to attack now. And you have your Dispel. Dispels magic, poison, and disease with Cleanse here. And then we've got Divine Protection. It's a it's like a personal defensive cooldown. Reduces the damage you take by 20%. It's a 1 minute cooldown. It's pretty nice. Flash of Light. It's an expensive but quick heal that you have. Kind of same as Holy Light, but faster and more expensive. And then we got Aura Mastery. It's your 3 minute cooldown, and it does whatever effect you choose from your level 60 talent. So in my case right now with Aura Mastery, it will increase the healing that the aura does, and it applies to everybody. So those are your abilities. Of course, we do have our Divine Steed, our movement movement buff. 45-second cooldown, 3 seconds. You move really, really fast, like you're mounted. And those are your abilities. So that's what you have as a Holy Pally. Now let's go ahead and talk about the stat priority, what you want as a Holy Pally. Your top stat is going to be Critical Strike right now. Besides getting bigger heals, of course, via critting, your Holy Shot crits do cause you to get that infusion of life, light buff, which means you get faster Holy Lights more often, or bigger flashlights, whatever you choose to use it on. So crit's going to be your best stat, followed by Mastery. And Mastery is that new Lightbringer where the closer you are to your target, the more you heal. And then, of course, if you're using Beacon of Lightbringer, it's the closer you are, or the closer your beacon target is to whoever you're healing, the more they take. And it's really quite powerful, so it's really, really good to have. And then versatility after, and then haste. Now, haste doesn't really interact with very much anymore. It does reduce your Holy Shot cooldown, but as far as like casting spells, typically as you get a lot of crit, you're going to have in a lot of procs, meaning you get fast Holy Lights, or your flashlight's already pretty quick on its own. And there's no like hots or anything you really have, so like haste doesn't affect that. So Critical Strike is your best, then Mastery, then Versatility, then Haste. Now I'll go ahead and talk about your healing rotation. I'll start by dividing it up kind of a little bit into single target and AoE, although like I said at the beginning, you do kind of do both typically in a raid. So the demonstration will be kind of just a raid fight where you can kind of see how it all plays out. So for single target, it's pretty simple. I use this dummy, and you see if I walk close enough, it'll start to heal from Aura of Mercy. But what you want to do is you always want to use Holy Shock on cooldown. So put a beacon on the target, and then Holy Shock whenever it's up, and then Bestow Faith, and then Holy Light if it's moderate damage. Now if it starts to get really, really dangerous, you could start spamming Flashlight, but always Holy Shock because you can't get this proc here. So you get a really quick Holy Light like so. Or you can get a bigger flashlight. So you're basically just doing Holy Shock, Bestow Faith, and then whichever you need, Holy Light or Flash of Light, just based on the damage, the speed of the damage that's coming in, and like how intense it is. So if you're kind of desperate, Flash of Light, and if you're not so desperate, Holy Light. And that's actually it for your single target healing. It's pretty simple. Of course, you can use, Avenging Wrath, which you need even more healing. You can use like Hand of Sacrifice, or Blessing now, I suppose, of Sacrifice, if you're willing to take the damage to kind of reduce the damage they're taking. And things like that. Just make sure you have your beacon up on the target you're spamming heals on, if it's just a single target, like, say, a tank in a Mythic Dungeon, for example. So that's pretty much it for single target. Of course, in a raid especially, you will also be using Judgment on the target. So if you're hitting this, make sure you hit Judgment to get that Judgment of Light buff, but if you're not, then you don't have to touch this at all. So as far as AoE healing goes, it's still kind of similar. You do add a couple abilities, but you still want to use your Holy Shot because it's really important to have that buff going so you can pick up targets, because you don't have that much AoE. As far as AoE healing, what you have available to you are Holy Prism if you take it, if you talent it, Light's Hammer if you talent that. And to use Holy Prism, just make sure you use on a target, like an enemy target, so it bounces off like that. See, it bounces from the target and then heals allies around them. So make sure you do that and not the other way around. If you use it on a friendly target, it then instead does damage to 5 things, which is not as efficient for your healing. And then you have Light of Dawn. You just use it whenever you need to. It hits up to 5 people, so make sure there are at least 5 people taking damage, and does a little bit of healing, like a fair amount. It's in a cone in front of you, so you do have to make sure you're facing the correct position. And so that's pretty much it. Now, how they kind of work together is you'll have Beacon typically on the tank, for example. And then you want to stand kind of in the range group. If you have the Beacon on a melee or a tank, stand like with the range so that your Mastery will kind of heal them more when you heal them. And then your Mastery will already heal the melee more because you've got your Beacon target in there as well. And then you always want to Holy Shock on cooldown pretty much no matter what rotation you are doing. Whichever, even if you're doing like single target, even if it's AoE damage, you do want to Holy Shock as much as possible so that you can use your heals and your procs from that. But if you're taking heavy AoE damage, then you go to your Holy Prism on the enemy, and then Light of Dawn, to pick them up. And then for single target, if you have heavy tank damage, for example, or someone blew up fire for Zul'Harak, then you can use Bestow Faith on that target. And then Holy Shock, of course, and Holy Light or Flash of Light, depending on how badly they need it. And at all times, somebody in the raid needs to keep up this Judgment of Light debuff, so make sure if it's your responsibility, if you're the only Holy Pally or Prop Pally in the raid, or no one else is taking it, that you do use it every so often. Now, it does last a fairly long time. I'll show you here. It lasts about 30 seconds. But it can be taken up. It has stacks, so if it goes to 0 before that, it will disappear, so just kind of keep an eye on it. And just so you know, like, hey, I need to Judgment again, because that will increase the heals that everyone takes and helps you raid out a lot, and it's one of the ways you can help with AoE heals. So that is pretty much how your rotation goes. Now I'll go ahead and show you guys in a raid. So here we are at Tyrant Velhari, and I'm using this as a demonstration because there's a lot of damage that goes out and some interesting things to consider. So as far as talents, I'm using Bestow Faith for the debuff that we get, that we need a lot of healing for. I've got Beacon on the tank, and I'm using not Judgment of Light, but Sanctified Wrath because I saw the Prop Pally has Judgment already, so I don't need it. So here I'm just kind of following the damage, always Holy Shock on cooldown to get those that little buff that you see there. So you can get a faster Holy Light or a bigger Flash of Light. Now I'm in the range group because I know the tank already has the Beacon gives me my mastery to essentially the people over there. So I don't have to. I can split and get more heals on the range group while also getting more heals on the melee group. So I'm kind of just reacting to damage here. If you need single target, always Holy Shock first. It'll get you that Flash of Light. And then for AoE, Holy Prism off the boss, and Light of Dawn if you need to. So here's a lot of AoE. So I'll pick up this low health guy and then Light of Dawn right there. And then just Holy Shock. I notice we're in phase 2, so I move in. And then I want to Holy Prism off the boss. And then Holy Shock, and then outside of that, just Holy Light, Flashlight if you're desperate. And I still don't use Light of the Martyr because I want those beacon heals to go through to the tank, which is really important. And here, a lot of damage starts coming out, so we try to pick this guy up, put Bestow Faith, which is nice because I got knocked in my heal, but I was able to use Bestow Faith and get my heals in there. Now he dies right here, so I switch to the next target that has the debuff, and I try to pump a lot of heals and Flash of Lighting. Kind of sucks my mana dry, but I was kind of desperate to get him full. And then just try to pick people up, Light of Dawn, Holy Prism off the boss, so it hits multiple people. Someone pops the ring, I popped Aura Mastery, just wanted to get those heals out to everyone in the 10-yard radius from Aura of Mercy. And then just kind of pick up people. So I see low health here, so Holy Light, and just kind of roll Holy Shocks and just the damage on people I see. So put Bestow Faith on this debuff that came out, and then Light of Dawn just to catch some of the other people that were getting kind of low. We are in phase 3 now, so there's no more healing debuff, no more cap on your max health. I'm just kind of pumping heals. Again, Bestow Faith, just to get that going, that big heal coming in for that debuff. At this point, I'm going kind of so I'm using a lot more Holy Lights rather than Flash of Light, and this tank almost dies here, so try to pick him up a little, but I noticed he gets picked, so try to get the debuff going. Put Bestow Faith on the tank just to make sure he doesn't die, and get a little heal in a few seconds. And eventually I switch my Beacon over because I realize he's taking a lot more damage. So I switch that over to him. And then a debuff comes out, so I try to heal him, this guy over here, but then the other tank takes a crap ton of damage and ends up dying. A little tunnel vision here, but you basically just react to the fight like this. And then right now, you don't have Spirit and you don't have your artifact mana returns, so it's really, really tough on mana. You notice a lot of the heals are probably pretty including myself here. But that's pretty much it. Just react to the damage, AoE, Light of Dawn, and Holy Prism off the enemy because it hits more people that way for heals. And then single target Bestow Faith, Holy Shock all the time, and use your cooldowns accordingly. That's how you kind of heal in a raid. Hopefully you kind of get a sense of how you balance your AoE and single target healing, as well as your cooldown usage. Now, as far as macros and add-ons, I don't have any macros I use right now because I don't really have anything to line up together. I don't have any on-use trinkets to go with Avenging Wrath, for example. But as far as add-ons, I am using weak auras to do a Judgment of Light kind of timer, and I do make it so that it doesn't matter if I cast it or somebody else casts it. I just need to make sure that it does show on the target. So as long it'll show me like how much time is left. So I just keep a tracker for that to make sure like do I need the Judgment if I'm using that ability or not, or that talent or not. And then that's pretty much it for now. You could use it for other things, I suppose, like when your cooldowns are coming up. You can do a lot of stuff with weak auras. I also use OmniCC. kind of track. It shows you like a number cooldown, so you see it says like 7 seconds here, rather than having to kind of guesstimate it. And same thing for any debuffs on the targets. Although weak auras can kind of take that role and move it away from the bars and more into the middle of your screen. And then that's pretty much it as far as add-ons go. So I hope you guys liked this video. Hope you found it useful. If you liked the video, feel free to hit it with a like. And if you like to see more videos like this, in the future, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.